Alright guys, in today's video we have more PlayStation and Xbox related news to go over and talk about. We have quite a bit to cover here in today's video, so before we get into it, do me a big favor and hit that like button to help this video out and show it your support. And if you are new to the channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button as well. I would certainly appreciate it. We're starting here though talking about the much anticipated PlayStation event that has been rumored for either later in June or early in July. We have some interesting stuff being said about this supposed event. So we're going to be covering some rumors here first. And then I also want to go over a little bit of evidence, in my opinion, that definitely points to Sony doing something in the coming weeks. So it says here, reading from WCCF Tech, that Sony is said to be gearing up for its own PlayStation Summer Showcase in the coming weeks. At least that's what reputable insider Navtra has said on the Reset Era forums. Assuming nothing has changed, just wait a couple more weeks. This is what the insider wrote in a PlayStation thread geared towards a possible Sony presentation and news about the upcoming Final Fantasy XVI. Navtra has been spot on in the past. She proved to have accurate info about the recently announced Final Fantasy spin-off Final Fantasy Origin. She also correctly said that a PS5 version of Death Stranding is on its way and claimed that both Sackboy and Spider-Man Miles Morales would be cross-gen titles. Adding to the fuel about a PlayStation Summer event is a recently verified user on the Reset Era forums who claimed that Sony was planning its own summer showcase that will feature a new God of War trailer, although this claim is said to have been based on months-old information and Sony's plans might have changed since then. So this user said that Sony is 100% having some kind of event or presentation in the summer. I know for a fact they are working on the God of War trailer for it, likely June, I believe. Now, obviously, there's something we need to pay attention to here when it comes to this. Not only the fact that these are insiders and we cannot look at this as any type of official confirmation. You guys know I tell you this, so do not walk away from this video assuming that there's 100% going to be an event. We need to wait to hear for official confirmation from Sony, but they both seem to be saying the same thing, that being that their plans may have changed. Now, I don't necessarily think they're saying that Sony may have canceled the event, like they were planning to do one and now they're not going to do one. Frankly, after the successful event that Microsoft just had, it seems incredibly unlikely that Sony would do something like that. I think what they mean by plans changing, I think that's referring to the timing of it, when exactly they're going to do the event, and obviously what may or may not be part of the event. Now, we do have to pay attention to the individual Navtra. They do have a track record, which is why I feel confident in talking about this. They have been correct about not just one thing in regards to Sony and their plans, but multiple things. I think at this point it's obvious they do have some type of inside information, but they do want to cover themselves by just letting you know that the plans may have changed, okay? This is not like somebody who's working at Sony and giving us, minute-to-minute updates on what they're doing, obviously. But we do have some other evidence, in my opinion, that points to Sony definitely gearing up to do something of their own. So reading from PlayStation Universe, it says here, key PlayStation figures congratulate Xbox on their E3 2021 showcase. So key PlayStation figures and heads like Hermen Hulst have congratulated both Microsoft and Phil Spencer on their E3 2021 showcase. The show, which aired yesterday, featured a number of announcements, including 27 titles, which will be available on Xbox Game Pass at launch. Hermen Hulst, head of PlayStation Studios, and Shuhei Yoshida, head of PlayStation Indies, both congratulated the company. And Hermen Hulst said congratulations to Phil Spencer and the whole team on a great showcase, great time to be a gamer. And Shuhei Yoshida is congratulating Xbox, Phil Spencer, Bethesda Studios, Aaron Greenberg, Major Nelson, and letting them know that he thought they had a great show. Now, obviously, this is a very classy thing for PlayStation executives to be doing. It's funny because we just talked about how Phil Spencer was congratulating Insomniac Games on the launch of Ratchet and Clank. There were some people saying, foolishly, that, well, you would never see a PlayStation executive do something like this when it comes to Xbox, and yet here we are. I thought that that was a silly thing for people to be saying in the first place. But, I'm going to read into this a little bit, and maybe I'm reading into it a little too much, but from where I'm sitting, don't you think it would be a really, really bad look for Hermen Hulst, the head of Sony's worldwide studios, to be congratulating their competition on a successful showcase to then not have a showcase of their own? I think that would be, frankly, a foolish thing to do, and I think it would just do nothing but backfire, honestly, and make people, specifically PlayStation fans, upset. It just wouldn't make any sense. Now, again, maybe I'm reading into it too much, but to me, it definitely makes it seem like, okay, Sony's going to be doing something of their own, because let's be honest, both Hermen Hulst and Shuhei Yoshida, they did not have to publicly congratulate Xbox or Phil Spencer or anybody else involved with the Xbox showcase. If they really did just want to do it to let them know that, hey, I really liked what you did, they could have done it privately. But the fact that they're doing it publicly tells me that, you know, this is maybe a very, very subtle tease that, hey, we are going to be doing something of our own, while also making themselves look, as I said, very classy by congratulating their competition. So you guys let me know what you think of that. One last thing I want to add here before moving on talking about Sony's event. It's interesting that we haven't seen anything on Forspoken or Final Fantasy 16. We know that Square Enix had their own event, and you would think that if these games weren't going to be showing up at, say, PlayStation's conference or their own showcase, they certainly would have made an appearance to some extent at Square Enix's own E3 event. So these are all things that make me think that there's definitely something coming. I think it's going to be a proper showcase that we are all expecting. But you let me know down in the comments below what you think about Sony having their own event and whether or not you are anticipating it. We're going to move right along here and talk about Stalker 2. This is a game that I think people are certainly interested in. It had about a 5-minute gameplay trailer revealed during Xbox's E3, and it's a timed exclusive. And I wanted to be sure to let everybody know about this because it seems like it's only going to be an exclusive to the Xbox consoles for about 3 months. As a game that does look very AAA, it looks really good. I believe it's next-gen only as well. It's definitely something that I think a lot of PlayStation 5 owners would want to play. So it says, after being revealed as an Xbox Series exclusive, it has been revealed in leaked documents that Stalker 2 could end up coming to PS5 just 3 months after it initially launches. The leaked documents come from the ongoing Apple and Epic court case and showcases a number of exclusive games for Xbox, PlayStation, and Nintendo Switch. One of those games is Stalker 2, which according to this document only has an Xbox exclusivity window of 3 months. Now, what's interesting is that GSC Game World, they are the developers of the game, I believe, did an interview with Gaming Bolt, and they said that there are no plans for a PS5 release of the game. Now, we do have to take that into account because just looking at this, you would assume if it's only going to be exclusive to the Xbox Series consoles for 3 months, then once that 3-month exclusivity contract is up, they're going to release it on PS5. That might not be the case. They just legitimately might not have any plans to bring it to the PS5, at least not anytime soon. So I do have to let you guys know about that. I'm going to be waiting and watching to see what happens with this, because this is a game I am pretty interested in. I think it looks really good, and it definitely piques my interest knowing it's next gen only. Apparently it's going to be a 150 gigabyte install on the Xbox Series consoles, which is insane. I have to imagine that if they were to bring it to PS5, maybe they could use the compression technology to bring that down. But we're going to have to wait to see if they do end up bringing it to PS5 3 months after the exclusivity window apparently ends. Moving on from that, we're talking about the partnership between Sony and Deviation Games. Apparently, we're learning that Sony is allowing developers to, quote, fearlessly, unquote, create, as Hermen Hulst hints at more partnerships. So this is something I think you guys will definitely be interested in, because we know that this is a pretty significant part of PlayStation's plan going further into this current generation and into the future. They want to continue to grow these partnerships, and they seem to be, working out very well for Sony. So it says here, over the last few months, Sony has announced a number of new external partnerships to create exclusive games. In March, the company announced a partnership with Haven Studios, led by Assassin's Creed veteran Jade Raymond. In April, it announced a deal for a AAA multiplayer game with Firewalk Studios, led by Destiny veterans. And more recently, it announced a partnership with Deviation Games, led by Call of Duty veterans. If a new interview with games industry is anything to go by, it seems that Sony is quietly building a number of external partnerships that it plans to slowly unveil going forward. I have been enjoying having seasoned talent get together with new partners to start a fresh outfit, without the boundaries to unleashing that creativity. PlayStation Studios boss Hermen Hulst, this is what he said to games industry: "I am for finding the best way for creatives to do the best work of their careers." Deviation's Jason Blundell revealed that Sony not only offered the studio financial security, but also granted its development team access to the same facilities and services used by Sony's own first-party studios, including Naughty Dog and Santa Monica Studio. "With this partnership with Sony, we can be ourselves," added Deviation's Dave Anthony. "And not only that, when we bring people into the studio, we can promise them that this is our culture and we can fearlessly create and innovate and be groundbreaking." Asked if Sony plans to acquire any of the studios that it's teaming up with, Hermen Hulst responded that Sony is treating these teams as, quote, "independent," unquote, and that, quote, "that's the structure that we've set up," unquote. So I think there's a lot of interesting stuff we can take from this. You look at the end of what's being said here, or the tail of it, and Hermen Hulst is saying that we're looking at these teams as independents, and that's the structure that they've set up. So to me, it seems that Sony is making it clear that, look, we're doing this with a partnership in mind. As of right now, there is nothing on the table about acquisitions, but I think if you look at this right from a more broad perspective, it really does seem like if these studios were to prove themselves to be very, very talented and they release a big hit game, I have no doubt that Sony will be like, look, what do you think about becoming a first party studio? You know, we'll offer you X amount of money. I'm assuming the more successful a game is, you know, the more popular it is, the more money they'll offer. I just think that that's a possibility, right? I know that Hermen Hulst is trying to kind of downplay that, but there's no doubt in my mind that one of the reasons why Sony is going after these new studios being formed by veteran talent is because they want to have that next big hit on their hands potentially, right? That they can kind of fold in very seamlessly into their first party. That's pretty much what they did with Insomniac, and that's kind of how I look at this. So I'm going to say I don't fully believe Hermen Hulst right now. I do think that this is certainly being done with the long-term potential of maybe one of these studios could become a Sony first-party studio if they are successful enough. And I also just want to highlight the fact that it's interesting how Sony is able to strike so many of these partnerships. You know, these are veteran developers. These are some of the most talented developers within the industry, and they're all kind of flocking to Sony. And I don't think that's just because of money. I really don't. I think that obviously the financial security aspect of it is a big deal for these creatives and for these new studios. Certainly it is. But it seems that Sony really is offering some type of development freedom, and as it says here, offering them access to all of their facilities. I mean, you look at the type of games that Sony makes, you look at the type of development culture that Sony has, it seems that it's very, very appealing to developers, and specifically talented developers who really want to try to do something great. So just wanted to take a moment to go over that with you. We're talking now about Jim Ryan and him once again talking about old games and specifically why the PlayStation 5 doesn't support them. So Sony Interactive Entertainment's Chief Executive Officer Jim Ryan has said that the PlayStation 5 doesn't support older games, unlike the Xbox Series consoles, because of limited time and resources when designing new hardware. As a result, important trade-offs had to be made. What is important to recognize when considering this question about designing a new platform is that time, engineering resource, and money are all finite, and that important trade-offs have to be made in terms of what's included and what's not. This is what Jim Ryan told Axios. He added that PS5 is fully backwards compatible with the PS4's library because there was a, quote, real desire, unquote, from fans to play PS4 games on their new consoles. As for supporting older games all the way back to the PS1 sometime in the future, Ryan had no comments on Sony's plans. So I do want to say that is at least a little bit of a positive. He's not outright denying it. He's not saying that they're not going to do anything. He's just kind of leaving it open. Maybe you could say even if they were planning to do nothing, that's the smarter way to go about it. Continues here by saying, according to Jim Ryan, Sony prefers the approach that it took with the Ratchet and Clank series by releasing a PS4 remake of the PS2 classic and later releasing a sequel exclusively on the PS5. We believe this approach keeps our IP fresh and contemporary, he added. In the same interview, Jim Ryan clarified a previous quote in which he appeared to dismiss older PlayStation games, and we already talked about that. And one thing he did add to his defense, I guess you could say, or not even a defense, but his clarification of his older comments about Sony's older games. He says, it goes with the territory, but I get a little bit frustrated at still being hit over the head with this one. So clearly, you know, he does get frustrated that this is constantly thrown up in his face, but it's to be expected. Now, look, I understand why Jim Ryan is saying what he's saying, and frankly, I don't think he could say it any other way. I know that there's a lot of people who don't like Sony's approach, and I do certainly sympathize and empathize with those who really want the ability to play PS3, PS2, and PS1 games. I've always personally had the stance that I'm buying a new console to play new games, and for me, the only real mistake would have been if Sony didn't make it fully backwards compatible with PS4 games, which they did. So for me, being able to play PS4 games and obviously looking forward to new PS5 games, that's more than enough. I cannot sit here and pretend that I'm upset that I can't play PS3, PS2, or PS1 games. It is an advantage that Microsoft certainly has, one that they've earned. You know, they've worked hard to earn that advantage for sure. But I think Jim Ryan's just once again kind of reaffirming that they don't really care about trying to make PS3, PS2, and PS1 games fully backwards compatible. That's just not something they want to put their resources, their time, and their money into. He's made that abundantly clear. Now, I think if there's anything here that people will get a little bit upset over is what he said about their approach with taking their classic games like Ratchet and Clank and recently with like Demon's Souls and kind of remaking them, rebooting them. In his eyes, this is a way for them to keep their IP fresh and contemporary. That's what he's saying. I do understand this, and I can't say that I'm entirely against it because I did buy Demon's Souls and I enjoyed it. You know, a lot of people very much enjoyed the Ratchet and Clank reboot that we got in 2016, but, you know, obviously people are not going to be all happy about what he's saying. They're not going to be completely on board with this. They are going to say, no, Jim, you should be allowing us to play our older games, not reselling stuff to us. And I get that, right? Like, I get that. I'm not saying that isn't annoying for some people, but, you know, this is just the stance that Sony's leadership has, and this is what they've done. And so, you know, we just have to kind of take it for what it is and move forward. So we'll see if anything changes in the future. Again, he didn't explicitly deny that they're going to be doing anything in the future. If they are, it seems likely it'll come in the form of something done with PlayStation Now, but we'll have to wait and see about that. But now we're talking about Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart, and I just want to let you guys know how this game is doing now that it's been out for people to buy. It says here, Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart's released to universal acclaim last week, and while much of that discourse surrounded its gorgeous visuals and lighthearted fun, there were quite a few discussions about its $70 price tag, especially because of the game's length. Turns out, despite all of the hoopla, gamers are willing to pay the asking price depending on the title. As reported by Games Industry, Rift Apart's first week sales at UK retail were on par with games like New Pokemon Snap and Monster Hunter Rise, making it the second biggest physical launch for a PlayStation 5 game behind Insomniac Games' own Spider-Man Miles Morales. So Insomniac competing with themselves there, which is priced much lower since it's an expansion. In fact, Rift Apart's launch sales surpassed Assassin's Creed Valhalla's PS5 launch sales. The game also sold 3 times more than Returnal did at launch, but Rift Apart is an accessible experience for all ages, unlike Housemarque's title. Seems that Returnal's actually selling pretty well. On top of that, even though it's not, you know, ranking within like the number 1, number 2, or number 3 spot, it's still hanging in there in most charts, so it's still selling. But there you go. I just want to let you guys know that Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart is off to a very solid start when it comes to sales. To me, this is not a surprise, but given all of the discourse as it says here, it's definitely interesting to look at the data and see, like, does all of this discourse like translate into lower sales, or is it having pretty much zero impact on sales? I think people see Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart. They see a quality game here with a lot of attention to detail and something that seems worth the asking price. That's my takeaway from this. But we are now going to move on and talk a little bit about Xbox. And we're going to start here talking about Starfield and The Outer Worlds 2. Both of these games were explicitly confirmed by Microsoft to be Xbox exclusives, and this is what Todd Howard had to say. Pick a side, meaning PlayStation, is that what you mean? Well, a little bit. You don't ever want to leave people out, right? But at the end of the day, your ability to focus and say, this is the game I want to make, these are the platforms I want to make it on, and being able to really lean in on those is going to make for a better product. By focusing on those platforms, you really get to lean in a lot on making it the best it can be for those systems, and we're big believers in all of the avenues that Xbox and Microsoft are doing to get games to more people, whether that's the integration with the PC, which is huge for us, or the cloud streaming and all of those things. So I think it's about taking a long-term view and our belief that those things are really fundamentally good. So we see it actually opening up more and more and more so that people's ability to play our games via Game Pass and other things, their ability to play our games doesn't go down. It goes up dramatically. And I can say I'm proud to be part of Xbox. I think it's great for the community of gamers. So I find this interesting, right? The reason why I find it interesting but not surprising is because I recall a lot of people trying to make it seem as though exclusivity was bad, or that Sony wanting to keep games exclusive or paying for timed exclusives, so on and so forth, was a bad thing. And I just can't help but get this feeling that a lot of those same people are now cheering on the fact that Todd Howard is pretty much saying our games are going to be better now because we don't have to worry about putting them on PlayStation. Obviously, for PlayStation fans who care about Bethesda games, this is a terrible thing to be hearing, but it's just the reality. Again, to me, it's not surprising because I already anticipated. I said the second we heard Bethesda was acquired, I remember saying explicitly multiple times, until we get confirmation otherwise, I expect all future Bethesda games to be exclusive to Xbox. And it seems that that's exactly what they're going to be doing here. So, there's a lot of people who are not happy about this, right? There's a lot of people who are upset at Microsoft just, you want to talk about money hatting.